Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. Today, I invite you to step into a journey of self discovery and empowerment where health, harmony, and success align through the wisdom of Tai Chi and Qi Gong, which I actually looked up the pronunciation on Google. Hopefully, I got that part right. But I'm here with a really awesome guest today. Jeff Patterson. He is the owner of Northwest Fine Arts. He's the founder of the Yielding Warrior, and he is an expert in so many things. He's actually achieved black belt in things I can and cannot pronounce. And he's expert in meditative arts. And I can't wait to not only hear Jeff's story, but to hopefully be enlightened and maybe learn something about myself in the process. And Jeff Patterson, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and for being here and everything that I've been watching. I've been watching a lot of your content, and I mean, I can't wait to learn more because I'm always thinking about how I can improve my own mindset, which I'm probably not doing a good enough job. And I knew when you and I crossed paths, I'm like, oh, this is a good person for me to talk to and learn from. And not only do I want to learn about what you're doing now, but maybe we can start by talking about your journey a little bit. I always love going back in the Wayback Machine, and I see that you were more of like a business management, finance person, major back in your college days, and just curious to not only ask what might have inspired you to go in that direction. I mean, I know we're going back a long way, but maybe from there and how you kind of like transitioned into what you are now doing.
Yeah, so as a younger kid, I was always intrigued by the martial arts, and I came from a single parent family where we didn't really have the means to support me doing martial arts as a youth. And so when I became a teenager and got a job, I was able to afford it on my own, and I went out and started training, doing martial arts. I joined the Marine Corps shortly after that and continued training doing the martial arts in the Marine Corps. And then after the Marine Corps, I went to college. And through college, I was training and teaching the martial arts through an instructor's studio here in Portland. And I was the first kid in my whole extended family to actually go through school. I got 2 degrees in less than 4 years. I worked hard. Everybody thought that, I was going to go get a big, important job in finance or do something like that. And I had this teacher back then who always used to tell me that you want to create a life and not make a living. And that really resonated with me. And my life was revolving around the martial and the meditative arts, and I was really intrigued and passionate about the training. And I remember, thinking even if I could only make a third of what I'd be making doing something else, it'd be what I loved to do and what I was meant to do. And so I just followed that path, and I never realized that it could have turned into what it has, but that's how I got started on the path.
That is absolutely brilliant. You want to live a life, not make a living. I don't know if I got that right, but I, that just the sentiment there is something I wish that more people would think about because I know for me, I not only picked an untraditional major. I majored in like, for lack of, just to break it down, television, just TV production, telecom. It has chameleon depending on where you go, defined differently, but it's not like a money type of industry, but it's something that I was passionate about. And I had a few people in my world saying, like, why are you doing that? You're not going to make any money doing that. And I mean, that might be true. I may not be a gazillionaire, but I'm very happy with what I do because I am doing something that I'm very passionate about. And making tons of money and just going for a career or doing something just because you think you can make six, seven figures, I mean, that's great. But at the end of the day, I don't think that always brings the most fulfillment. So I give you a ton of credit for not only listening to those wise words, but for following through and sticking with your passion.
Yeah, it looks like you've done the same thing. That's good. It's nice to hear as well.
I tried. So, as far as like starting this business, it's a untraditional path for sure, and you started this up in the mid 90s. What was it like to start a business like this back then? And obviously, it's a much different era. We're not talking about being online to start unless there is a component I don't know. You look like you want to say something, so I'll stop rambling and I'll let you explain.
Yeah, I started this business up in 94 when I got out of school, and I was at the time teaching out of my basement and renting a room out of the local gym and teaching out of PSU racquetball courtrooms. I got a partner back then, and then we ended up renting out a place, and it was a good 5 to 6 years of going into debt and not making much money at all, and just following my dream before it ever started turning into anything. And so it was very difficult at first. Um, but I started learning the ropes and understanding what the business model was about and learning how to make it successful. And now, at my academy, I've had over 26,000 students come through my academy here. And I have students that have been with me for almost 30 years, and it's like my second family here. So it's really a pretty special place right now.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's amazing that you're, so many years into it. I'm sure there's been so many phases and so many things that, not to assume anything, but I'm sure with your background, so all the things that you specialize in, I mean, maybe I should start by asking, how did you kind of like build yourself up to more specializations? Was it just did you start with just one thing? Were there like a couple things? Were you the only one who was teaching? Uh, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, so as a younger guy, I was very much into Western boxing, and I used to go to this boxing gym that's just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, it's run a little different than your traditional style fitness class in that usually there's a few coaches rolling around, and each one of those coaches has a few fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of the coaches was a very well-known coach and created very high-level competitors. And I was really looking to get to spend some time with him. And he was busy. He had a full plate, and so I'd always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there, and I'd work hard and I'd show him that I'd be worthy of his time if he started investing some time in me. And I basically followed him around for about 3 or 4 months. And finally, he started showing me a few things. And it was only about 2 or 3 months into training, or excuse me, 2 or 3 weeks into training with him. And he said something to me that changed my life forever. In that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't like Tai Chi for old people in the park? How's that going to make me a better fighter? And I had a lot of respect for him though back then, and I followed his path and I followed his guidance. And not only did it change my life in many ways, but through the years, I mentioned I've had many students come through the academy, and I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about wanting to get this message out there. And that's what motivated me to write my last couple books and create my online program and my teacher training programs, and really kind of give me the fuel to keep going.
Well, the one thing that I can really give you credit for that I don't think enough people do is it sounds like you really listen to people and you really pick up on key ideas and things that, it sounds like you really internalize a lot of the feedback that you're getting. And I think that has really helped you as far as like just evolving. And I love hearing that because I pride myself in trying to be a good listener, and it's not an easy skill to have. And I feel like either you have it or you don't, and it definitely seems like you do. And I'm sure it helps you to deal with so many personalities and to teach and to evolve.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe there might be some inherited qualities there. However, I think that the meditative arts and developing an evolving life practice with meditation really helps you be more in tune and help you develop a lot of those listening skills. My most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, talks about a concept called yielding, which kind of feeds into that listening skill idea. So I'll briefly talk about what I mean when I say yielding. And in my book, I've broken down yielding into three categories. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the easiest one to understand, and it's the idea that, I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us seeing who's the bigger meathead, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. And this allows me to be more strategic in my movement. Now, in order to be good at this style of practice or this level of yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. And while this is a lifetime to master these skills, from day one of incorporating a meditation practice into your life, you start to develop this awareness that helps you be more in tune with all of these things inside yourself. And now this is where it gets very interesting because not only do you see these things more clearly inside yourself, but you also see them more clearly in other people. And this is where we move into what I call mental yielding. So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation, and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance. And I adjust the conversation to keep you in a happy place rather than going off on a tangent and getting so far off track you want to slap me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions are extremely powerful. One, we're just being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic in our interactions and guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is beneficial in your relationships and business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different applications of this. And then lastly, we have what I call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path, and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have taken a step back and heightened our awareness and been more in the present moment, oftentimes we can make a more educated choice that can save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. I've been running this academy for 30 years now. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I think I do yielding all the time. Well, I would agree with that to a degree in that I think everybody does some level of yielding, whether they're conscious of it or not. However, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years. I guarantee you that person would see more things about the timeline and the series of events I know than I ever could, and so understanding how to see this awareness in yourself and in other people, I truly believe will never reach that level of potential as it will as if you've adapted a meditation practice in your life.
I'm glad you said the last part there because I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know, I feel like there's a little bit of yielding in me too. But to your point, your level of yielding, especially with your expertise, versus me being just, the inexperienced, so to say, in this case, I mean, it's a much different level, it's a much different perspective. And I can certainly respect that. And one thing that I'll personally say that you're teaching, or at least I feel like you're trying to teach, that I think is awesome, is to just make people more mindful, maybe, of their actions and their interactions, and maybe how, you know, thinking before they're speaking or before they're doing. And I know that's something I try my best to uh, do well in life. And I think that's great. I know that your perspective on that would be entirely different than maybe mine, but just I think that's something that more people need to be mindful of. And I think that's great that you teach that.
Yeah. I think everybody, you're right. We all have a different perspective, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about life. We're all coming at it from different angles, right? And if you're practicing and doing things, you're going to see things differently and from a different angle than I will. And that's kind of what makes this practice so special is that, even though, we're both practicing the meditative arts, a lot of different things come, and that's why there's no exact ABC path for any one person, and that's why I always tell people we want to create an evolving life practice with the meditative arts because there's so many different directions you can take meditation. There's the athletic side of the training that helps improve your performance. There's the therapeutic side that helps your health and longevity. There's the medical side. There's the philosophical side. There's the spiritual side. And people come to the practice for any one of those areas. And if you approach that, you might start, say, doing the spiritual path, but really resonate with the medical side or really resonate with the therapeutic side and then follow a different path. And everybody's path's going to be a little different. And even within each one of those categories, there's different practices that might resonate more with you than with me. And that's why having a real versed guide to kind of help you along and show you the shortest path to where you want to go is real important. And I always tell people, you know, I've heard so many times, people say, I've tried meditation. It just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. You know, I, I don't know where, but somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to be good at meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana and this place where nothing bothers you. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I've spent the last 36 years of my life studying this practice, and I've been fortunate enough to train with some amazing teachers around the world that are very high level meditation practitioners. And I've never once met anybody that doesn't get distracted. We're all human, we all get distracted. And the thing is that when you meditate, it's important to recognize the distractions and understand how to bring yourself back to focus. So, say you're sitting for 20 minutes or doing a movement practice for 20 minutes, you may get distracted 50 times during that session. But every time you get distracted, you use your posture, your breath, your movement, whatever it is, to bring you back to focus. And now you just got 50 repetitions of being in that distracted state and coming back to balance. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this resiliency that helps you deal with anything that comes your way, whether it's somebody saying something to throw you off your game, or maybe you have a stressful day at work. You're able to bring yourself back to focus and approach it from a positive, centered place. If you say something negative to me and I'm already unbalanced and distracted, it's going to be a lot different response coming back to you than if I'm peaceful and I'm relaxed and I'm in that centered state and you say something negative to me and I respond from that place. And so learning how to bring ourselves back to that centered state is so important, and as we develop a meditation practice, it's important to have a daily ritual where you meditate for a little bit every day, whether it's a movement practice or a sitting practice. But if you're doing this every day, say you're sitting for 20 minutes a day and you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling relaxed, and then the whole rest of the day you're stressed out and you're worried about stuff, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. So we need to learn how to integrate these practices into our day so it affects us in everything we do. And that's why we use a lot of what I call active practices, which are things that you can do when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. So, in coordination with our ritual practice, we integrate some of these active practices to help us stay in that present neutral position throughout the day and build that higher level of awareness.
As I listened to you talk about balance and being so centered, the one thing that I noticed right away and I got self-conscious about, I was trying to be a little bit jokey, and you're just this is before I even hit record. I'm like, either he doesn't find me funny or he's just that centered. And now I'm getting you laughing a little bit. I think you're just that centered. And I'd be curious before I ask you how you help others to discover what the best method is for them. And this is kind of a two-pronged, total opposite question, I guess. But how do you, when you're feeling a little out of center and you're not this super uh, balanced person that I seem to be seeing and talking to, how do you get yourself back to that state, or does that ever even happen?
Well, yes, and just like I mentioned earlier, I've met some meditation teachers in my career that, I feel like just an infant to, that are very high level practitioners. And even after my 36 years of training, I still feel like they've accomplished so much, and even those people get distracted. Everybody gets distracted. And the idea is, though, is how long does that distraction affect you? Sometimes people will have something happen to them and say, I don't know, they sprain their finger and then they're depressed for 30 days until it feels better. Other people will realize, I can't do this and I can't do that, but what are all the things I can do? And they change their mind to a positive mindset, and the meditative arts helps us make these realizations so we can redirect ourselves and not get too far off down that distracted path. And with a meditation practice, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing a sitting practice, a standing practice, a movement practice, whatever it is, there's five core fundamental principles that you want to build on to create a solid meditation practice. And I call them the five regulations. And briefly, I'll kind of touch on what those are. So we have regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Now, regulating the body is the easiest one to understand and the easiest one to cultivate. And so we usually start with that with new students. And a basic example of that would be, think about a time maybe when you're sitting down at your computer and you've been there 3 or 4 hours and you're feeling lethargic and low on energy, and maybe your shoulders are rounded forward, maybe your neck's getting sore, and just feeling very depleted. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel energized and excited. Well, these two different energetic states we are in 100% control of all day, every day. And so having that recognition and that awareness to notice when these things are coming out of balance is very effective in regulating our physical, mental, and emotional states throughout the day. And a little bit higher kind of level in this body regulation would be maintaining a certain level of muscular tone in the body and flexibility and eating a healthy diet and getting enough sleep. All of these things kind of affect our body's performance. And then we have regulating the breath, which is a very deep topic. And regulating the breath is something that, if you get into the meditative arts, you'll be studying for the rest of your life. And the idea of the breath is it can be used as a tool to direct our energetic and our mental thoughts and all of these things that we do every day. And because there's so many different breathing strategies, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. And often qigong is referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. An example of a yin breath would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if you want to emulate this style of inward energy with your meditations, we can do longer inhales, maybe soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward. And this is very powerful for reducing stress and dealing with anxiety or panic attacks or improving your creativity. There's a lot of applications for this yin side of the breath. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. And it's kind of like if you ever had to push your car, maybe, or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to use the exhale and maybe put tension in the exhale or make the exhale audible. This helps expand the energy and energize us and send the energy outward. And so once we've learned how to use the breath as a strategy, now we can use it to regulate our emotional and mental ups and downs throughout the day. Everybody goes through emotional ups and downs every day. It doesn't matter who you are. Some people are a little more like a roller coaster, others maybe a little more balanced. But when you start noticing these things rise and get a little bit heightened, we can use the yin breath to help bring it back down. When you start feeling depleted, we can use the yang breath to bring it back up. And now we can use this idea to find more balance and regulation in our energetic states throughout the day. And then the third regulation is regulating the mind. Just as with the breath, the mind is a very deep topic and something that you'll study for the rest of your life. We already kind of touched on, when you're meditating, how we use the focus to bring us back to center. This is an idea of mental regulation. There's this story that I really enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress and she's crying. And the older of the two monks, he yells across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking down the road for a couple miles, and finally the younger monk is just furious and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we have to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we finally realize we got to let this thing go, right? And so when we talk about those imbalances and those distractions, learning how to recognize the imbalance on that first step away from the puddle is so important because every step we take after that, it starts to build that negative momentum. And so having this awareness is really important in this part of the training. And then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. Regulating the energy is an extremely deep idea and concept and something that we could literally talk about for hours. But just briefly, what it means is once you've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to send the energy in the body inward or extend it outward or circulate it to get different outcomes in our practice. And through some of the more advanced meditation practices that we'll do, we'll use these different energetic circulations in the body to get different outcomes. And then lastly, the fifth regulation is regulating the spirit, which is a very profound idea. And it's something that meditation masters and monks will spend their entire life's journey working towards that stage of enlightenment. Well, once you understand these basic five regulations, you can see that by cultivating this in your life, there's nothing that it can't make better. There's nothing that you can't use the meditative arts to improve. And so it really is a powerful practice. And I always tell people, if you do this practice and you make it part of your life, it'll be the best thing you've ever done for yourself.
It kind of sounds like I need to listen to number three because I've had a lot of stuff happen in my life, and as a result, I think it tends to sometimes bring me down the rabbit hole of thinking about the past rather than living in the present and being mindful of that as I've been for a long time. I have done everything I can to try to be a little more forward thinking in the now thinking, but it can be difficult, and I mean, just getting through those uh, obstacles and just getting past some of those things that you might be hung up on from past experiences, it's not easy. And I really found your story with regulation number three to be impactful because I sitting here like, man, I still have a long way to go on that one.
A lot of people and all of us, we all have that journey that we're going through and those problems that affect us in that way. However, where I see people getting a roadblock in their practice is they look to the meditative arts, like say they have panic attacks or they have a negative thought that takes them down the path. They'll use the practice when the panic attack comes or when the thought comes, and then they'll say, "Why isn't this working?" And it's not something where you can plant the apple seed today and this afternoon we're going to have apples. You've got to develop that consistent practice and do a little bit every day, and that's so important. And the idea is if you just do a little bit every day and make yourself better today than you were yesterday and better tomorrow than you were today, and you approach that with your meditation practice, you will be amazed at where you will be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. I mean, you really can accomplish a lot with that consistent focus, and probably, for me as a teacher, one of the most challenging things to do is teach people the value in being consistent and really seeing what this practice has to offer. And I've come up with three things that I like people to think about when they're thinking about taking on a meditation practice. And I feel like if you really investigate and spend some time thinking about these three topics and and use them, that you'll be successful with the practice. And the first one is, why are you being drawn to the practice? What is important to you and why do you want to do this? And not just why do you want to do it on the surface level? Like maybe you want to stay healthy into your old age to watch your grandkids grow up, or maybe you want to learn how to deal with a stress disorder like panic attacks, or maybe you want to improve your athletic performance. Whatever it is, and then think about all of the good things that will happen if you achieve that goal. And then also think about what all the bad things that are going to happen if you don't achieve that goal, and really use that as some fuel to stay consistent, because consistency in this practice is, which is number two, is the most important thing with developing a spiritual meditation practice. You know, you develop this discipline and this integrity and this perseverance by doing this. And this feeds over into every area of your life. And that's where these things really start to blossom and bear the fruit that we're looking for by doing the practice. And then, third, and the last thing to consider is you need to find a guide, somebody that can help you. If you think you're going to be self-taught in a practice like this, you're going to waste a lot of years and a lot of time and oftentimes never get where you need to go. You know, I've been teaching now for well over 30 years, and I've had students come into the academy that have been self-taught and they've been training for 15, 20 years. And they'll look at some of my students sometimes that have only been around for maybe 12 months, maybe 2 years, and they're so much further along in their practice because they've had direction and they've known what to do to help them reach what they're looking to accomplish. And, you know, life is short and your time is valuable, and finding a good guide is not that difficult. And so, if you take those three things into consideration and you really follow through with that and you do this practice and you commit to it for every day for a year, I guarantee you that you'll never stop doing the practice and you'll stick with it for the rest of your life because you'll see so many benefits from the practice that you'd never want to stop.
Well, I find myself being pretty humbled just by listening to you today because I know for myself, I think a lot about things like mindfulness and I like to have quiet time. Like I'm one of those people who are pretty good at just turning everything off for a while and just sitting in silence and just being quiet. And my version of what you teach is absolutely nothing. I feel like just from talking to you, I feel a lot more balanced and centered, and definitely there's a big difference between doing it yourself and then being with a professional. I can vouch for the fact that, yeah, teaching yourself, not that I'm really trying to teach myself, but just there's a difference. And I
Sure.
feel it just from having this conversation with you. And, we're just having an interview. So, but how often should somebody meditate?
You want to meditate every day. You know, I always tell new students when they come in that you want to make the commitment of doing 20 minutes a day. It's not like you need to retire to a cave and be a monk and meditate up in the mountains for the rest of your life. But if you just did 20 minutes a day and then integrated some active practices throughout the day, you know, every 60 or 90 minutes, maybe you count out 10 breaths, or you do a movement practice or some spinal rotations, and then you integrate some philosophical practices into the day as well. A combination of these three things, that ritual, the active practices, and the philosophical practices, you can really get some good progress and establish some positive momentum with your training.
Now, you talked a little bit about how it's good to have somebody train you. Do you have, even though you're the expert and obviously have this amazing background, do you have somebody that you, I guess, I hate saying the word report to, but do you
Yeah.
have somebody who you go to help you in your meditative practice?
Yeah, I'm always trying to learn from anybody I can. I go around and I study what different people are doing. Right now I have one teacher that has really been a strong influence on me who is still alive. And his name is Sifu Sam Tam. He's up in Canada. I'm actually going to see him here in a couple months. And amazing guy. He's 84 years old now, so he's been around for a bit and a lot of knowledge. And I'm always learning. I'm always studying. I just got back from a trip where I went down to Abu Dhabi in India and trained down there and um so yeah, I'm always looking to learn.
Do you have a favorite form of meditation or anything that you practice that you like to do, or do you just try out everything?
Well, I wouldn't say I try out everything. However, I think that having a combination of some sitting practices, some breath work, some standing meditation, some movement practices like a Tai Chi form or some Qigong, something that you can do to hit all of the areas of the body because you want to learn how to, somebody who only does sitting meditation and they don't develop that higher level of awareness and that body connection. I feel like they're missing a lot of their development of what could happen. And so I have like a combination of things I do from those different styles of meditation there that I do every day.
That's that's amazing. I mean, yeah, I think what you're doing is so cool, and yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom here today on Mark My Words. I know you have a lot of things going on. You have a lot of content. You have the book, and obviously you have your practice. So I'm going to give you a chance to tell everybody how they can find you, work with you, get your book, etc. Anything else you want to share?
Sure. So if you want to reach out to me, you can contact me through my website. It's theyieldingwarrior.com. If you'd like to get a free copy of my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, you could go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and just pay for shipping and handling. We'll send you out a copy of the book. Also on that website, we have our membership program that teaches you how to build a personalized, evolving meditation practice using all of these different methods and how to cultivate a training routine and all of that. And then I also have my teacher training program up there, where for those of you that maybe have a martial arts studio or a yoga studio, or maybe you're a life coach and you want to understand how to deliver a meditative practice to your clients or add another pillar into your business, there's that's available for you as well.
Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me. This was amazing just to get a little bit of an insight into what you do. And I think what you do is extremely important as we live in this crazy world that gets crazier every day. All these bizarre things going on. It's good to have people like you that we can go to find that balance and to work on whatever we need to work on in order to be a better version of ourselves in life. And I'll tell you, with all the things going on in the world coming into this episode today, it's just great for me to have this conversation. You have me all balanced and centered, and that's just off of your energy in this conversation. So I wish you all continued success with what you're doing, and I think you have an awesome thing going. And thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate you out there trying to spread a positive message as well, and keep it up. I think what you're doing is very honorable.
I appreciate that. I'm certainly trying to be as honorable as I can. So I definitely appreciate those words. And I thank you, Jeff Patterson, again. He is the owner of Northwest Fighting Arts. He's the founder of the Yielding Warrior. And he was my guest here on Mark My Words. So I'm Mark Schmidt. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you soon with another episode. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.